if no one listens to this show, it doesn't matter, because the value I've been getting, it's worth every dollar I put in, every second I put in, every piece of effort I put in, because I'm getting so much out of these conversations.
There's value for everybody, not just value for us from listening to the guest, but also the guest is receiving value. If the worlds align, there's opportunities for everybody in here. And that was absolutely amazing.
My biggest KPIs are, am I still enjoying the process, right? So that's something I check in every week. Am I getting feedback from people, whatever the case might be, right? I'm looking for specific feedback around the content itself.
How do we actually monetize this? And this is going to look very different for a lot of people. But before we even go there, right, we have to conquer being consistent and being out there and putting our content out.
There's a sign right behind me here on the right side that says, follow your heart. The reason we're even having this conversation right now is because I've been following my heart. And that's my why, that's my purpose, that's what drives me. And if you find that in your life, don't wait for anyone to give you the go-ahead. Give yourself permission and go after it.
We've got some
Hey, I'm Luis.
And this is Luis.
And welcome to the Content is Profit podcast.
In here, you're going to get the insights, accountability, and drive to create consistently and increase revenue.
You'll hear from top entrepreneurs, creators, and anything and everything you need to know about content. All this while having a good time.
The goal of this podcast is simple: entertain, educate, and turn your content into profit.
Ka-ching.
Good job.
Go.
You got the flow, your muscle memory is back. It's like, oh, these are the right buttons.
I know, I had to review it a little bit. And we got to make the same setup in like all the rooms that we are actually recording now. But it is what it is, guys. Today we have a special guest we met through our community. We actually jumped on a call and we were talking about micro content actually. And his story is super exciting because he works with like one of the biggest companies in the world. And now he's also producing this amazing podcast. And I'm very curious on how he manages to do both at the same time and what's the inspiration behind it. I hope his story serves as inspiration for many of you that are trying to publish today. Guys, if you're enjoying this show, go ahead and follow it in your favorite podcasting platform and social media and also YouTube. Go watch the videos. Go see my amazing face, Fonzie's amazing face, and then vote.
Okay.
Who's more handsome?
Hashtag pick a bro.
Let's go.
And if today's guest help you move one step closer towards your goal, please don't forget to share this episode. And of course, leave a 5-star review.
That's not so bad. Just go watch the videos because there's valuable information in there. You know, I'm just saying. Anyways, like I mentioned, we met this amazing guest after a masterclass that we did with one of our partners, Capsule. Shout out to them. Incredible company. And, I extended an invitation. I'm like, guys, if you want to be on the show, let's talk about this. And we did our 11-minute, that's one of our tricks, 11-minute call that turns out to be like 30-minute call. And
the other day I received a message from somebody saying, that is oddly specific. And I was like, yes. It is on purpose.
It is on purpose. They don't always remember us for the two Luis's names, but the 11-minute call.
That's right.
But we uncover a lot of stuff, and I'm very curious to, explore this conversation with him on this show since he has worked for a company called Microsoft. Ooh. And then he launched a show that we're going to reveal the name in just a second. I'm so excited because he's very passionate about how he helps people with his message. Anything else, Fonzie?
No, you knocked it out of the park.
Let's go,
Bring
baby.
Bring him on.
Guys, please welcome our new Content is Profit friend, Constantin Moran.
What's up, Constantine?
Hey guys, hey Luis and Fonzie. It's a pleasure to be here. Awesome introduction as always. It's so good to be here.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
I see that you're also wearing a soccer jersey. I missed the memo. What the heck?
I was born in Romania, moved to Canada where there's not a whole lot of soccer, so I still follow it from back in Europe. Bayern Munich was one of my favorites growing up, so I figured why not? Why not wear a shirt with a color I like, red, right?
That's
like
right.
And that's it. Have some fun.
That's right. I mean, unfortunately, it's not an Arsenal jersey, but, we'll pass it. It's better than a Barcelona jersey. So that's awesome.
Dude, Constantine, when we met, I was so curious, right? Like, I remember, like, my personal story, right? I think we started our business and we started podcasting because we wanted a way out of where I was working at the time, right? So for me, those two like never computed together. They were like, this is, I have to do one or the other, but you managed to do both like really well, right? You work for Microsoft, you run teams, like you do sales, like, and that's like your life, but also you decided to start this amazing platform, right?
Yes.
And And if I'm not mistaken, right, like your show has been going for quite a while, and you've been helping some people, right? And I want you to share that story. It's like, why do you decided to actually launch a podcast while you do your corporate life?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question, Luis. And my show has been live for about 3.5 months, but I've been working at it for the last almost a full year now.
Yeah.
And while I, of course, do the full-time gig with Microsoft and enjoy my personal life as well.
Absolutely.
Now, the big question as to why I started doing this has to go back to me realizing that there is more to life for me, and there is a why, there is a purpose behind what I am to do, and all the skills I've acquired over the last almost 40 years. And that kind of culminated for me last summer when I thought really hard about what's truly my why, what motivates me, what drives me. And after doing a lot of digging internally and asking friends and asking people that know me, I came to the conclusion that really what gets me going every day is working with people, inspiring people, empowering people on this beautiful journey that we call life.
Yeah.
And I figured, what way can I give back besides one-on-one conversations through mentorship and coaching? And podcasting felt like a natural fit because I'm one that listens to lots of podcasts, yours being one of them.
Thank you.
That's an amazing way to give back. So why not start something where I can, again, put my knowledge and my experience into something that gives back to a broader audience?
Yeah. So I'm a little curious on, you mentioned that the podcast has been going on for 3 months, but you've been in the works for about a year, right?
Yes.
I'm curious, right? Because a lot of people, they stay, some people stay all their time in that ideation process, maybe without launching it. And I'm curious, what was that process for you? What happened in those 9 first months that you were thinking about launching your podcast, or you were planning your podcast? Maybe why wasn't it launched on month 3 rather in month 9, right? Like, I'm so curious on how that process came out for you. And feel free to include, the ups and downs. If you had any doubts, any internal challenges, I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I love the question, Fonzie. And the idea of the podcast first came to me in August of last year. So about 12 months ago now, 12 months and a bit. And like you just mentioned, there were doubts at the beginning because I was like, hey, I'm a kid from Eastern Europe. Yes, I moved to Canada. Yes, I work for Microsoft. I have a cool job. But who am I to have a voice, to bring a podcast to the world? And why would people listen to me? So there was a lot of self-doubt at the beginning. Yeah. But what started to happen is I started talking to friends and coworkers and people in my life. And I said, hey, I have this idea. What do you think? And the feedback started to come in pretty, amazing at the beginning. And they were like, hey, you might have something there. Look into it, do some digging and see what you can come up with.
Yeah.
And I have a project management background, which means that I like to really plan things out, to have a structure.
Yeah.
But it also means I like to learn, right? So I don't want to just jump in and do something half-baked. I would rather put some effort into it and do it properly, especially because this is a passion project and something that I would like to do long-term, not just for a month or a year. So the process started by me reading a lot, listening to lots of podcasts, watching a lot of videos on YouTube. And then eventually, it wasn't until January of this year when I said, you know what, let me take all my ideas and put them down in a PowerPoint presentation. I love making presentations because what Microsoft is I prepare presentations and deliver these presentations to CEOs, CIOs, and anything down below to a project member, right? And I've done conversations or presentations to hundreds of people, and that's what I love to do. So I said, you know what, I'll put my ideas on paper, and then I'll take them in conversations to my friends. So again, I called up people. I said, hey, do you have 15 minutes? Do you have half an hour? Let's chat about this idea I have, and I would like your feedback. So with each conversation, my confidence grew because I was receiving a lot of amazing feedback and some constructive feedback that allowed me to refine my ideas and allowed me to refine my approach. Now, why did I choose to go live so late in the process? Well, there's 2 main reasons. One, I wanted to make sure I'm ready. And 2, I wanted to pick a date that was right before my 40th birthday, which was in middle of May of this year. So then I picked a date probably 4 months ahead, and then I started the process. And one of the areas that gave me the most anxiety was finding potential guests to be on my show. And it turned out that was actually the easiest part.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, since I put my name out there, just a show name, on a couple of the platforms that allow for guests to come on, I've had over 600 or 700 requests of people wanting to be on the show.
Wow.
So the anxiety of not having enough people turned into a small anxiety of like, how do I even respond to everyone? How do I even check all these messages?
Yeah.
And I'm still behind in that aspect. So I would say, Fonzie, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like a high level how and why.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love it.
That's perfect. I mean, as you're sharing your story, it looks like you were pretty decisive on you were actually going to do this, right? And you reached out and you reached out to some friends and be like, hey, give me your opinion on this. And I think is like pretty original opinion on this is where I'm creating something. I levitate towards not asking for the opinions of others, just putting it out there, right? Like, and to me, that seemed easier, right? Because I feel like that opinion that coming from the outside might steer the direction in a way that then later on, I'm not going to be able to fulfill in a sense, or I don't feel happy about it. That's like my very personal opinion. Like we have our dad who launched a show not so long ago, right? And he was sending us all these things. It's like, tell me like what you think about this podcast or this thing. And the topic is something that, you know, with all due respect, we do not care about. Like that's something probably like, and I told him this, like, I'm like, look, Dad, I'm not your ideal listener, right? Can you be a little bit more specific on the feedback that you're looking for? It's like, is it on the storytelling? Is it like on the structure? Like what do you want feedback about? So were you never scared of like getting an answer that you might not expect, or were you super open because of your past in the environment that you work for? A lot of people that we talk to are really part of the friction from them publishing is how other people might perceive like their podcast, their message, their thing, right? And that's maybe why I levitate towards like, I'm just going to do my thing and I'm not going to ask for anything until like I'm way down the road that I'm already very comfortable executing. Right. So I'm curious, like what came through your mind? Were you just super open from the very beginning, or did I ever cause friction for you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I love that you went there. I'll be honest with you. Growing up the way I did in Eastern Europe during the communist era, there were a lot of learned behaviors, one of them being tied to looking for acceptance or looking for validation externally. And it wasn't something that I truly realized until actually much more recent in the last 6 or 7 months. And one of the reasons I was reaching out to people is because that's what I used to do all the time. It would be like, I have an idea. It's almost like I wasn't trusting myself. So I'm like, hey, what are your thoughts? So part of Fonzie's question from earlier around the confidence piece, like, you know, have I always had up or just had some downs in there? And there was this confidence piece. And I'm like, I have this idea, but I'm not really sure if it's good enough. So let me go validate with people. So there was definitely part of it to do with that. But the second part was, and it's something I do in my professional life now and in my personal life, is that I don't want to let my ego take over too much and think that I know all the answers, because I know I don't.
Yeah,
so it's about what blind spots am I missing? So when I would receive feedback from people, it wouldn't be like, oh, Luis, you had such great ideas, I'm going to incorporate all of them. I would take them back, I would do my own research, I would see how they would fit in with whatever vision and idea I have, and then I would implement whatever parts or whichever parts I would feel
cool
matching with my idea.
Yeah.
But the more I work on myself on a personal level, the more I realize what you said as well. It's good to often take that first step, take that first leap, and then as you go, try to get people in to help you with those blind spots that we're not seeing in our day-to-day life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's an art in a way of learning how to receive feedback, right? And at the same time, potentially know when to kind of like put blinders on and focus, right, on your own. And you talked about confidence, kind of like validating that idea. And I got the thought, because again, two very different processes, right? Like my brother said, he doesn't want validation. He just wants to do it. He just wants to put it out there. And then you, on your process, you're, okay, I want some sort of validation. I want some sort of feedback. See, you know, if this has some sort of appeal, right? And now I'm seeing is like, okay, things are not just black and white. They can, you know, there's a grayscale in there and there's room for everything. So the question would be potentially when to seek validation, right? And the first thing that comes to mind is, well, you know, if you're going to invest a lot of money into a big business, right, a lot of resources into a business, you potentially want to validate the idea right? Evaluate the market to see if it's a good idea to launch and invest all those resources. Maybe when not to seek so much validation is when you don't have that many resources, right, attached to that could potentially be it, right? And I feel like you, on your case, you were looking at this as a long-term project, right? Again, you were attaching it to your why, like you want this to be something impactful. And I think, whether subconsciously or consciously, you already knew that you were attaching a lot of resources to it. And I think you want to validate that idea of like, you know what, I really want to make sure I'm launching something that is, that I can and will commit for a long term. Because, a podcast is that. It's a project for the long term. If you're going to put content in the form of a podcast, it's a long-term journey. So I'm curious, do you think in a way, now looking back at it, you might have not processed it that way when you were trying to validate that idea, right? But I think there's a lot of maybe internal challenges that we can unpack in there. You said confidence as well, right? But was there any other resources? What was your view attached to it as you were asking people for their feedback and, for guidance in a way?
Absolutely. And I agree with you, Fonzie. It's definitely not black and white. There's a gamut of colors in between and variations of it. And I would say it depends on the aspect in life. If I were to, let's say, use all the knowledge I have now to go back and redo this process, there'll be a lot less validation seeking, let's say, conversations. But what I would emphasize more on, I think, Luis, you touched on this with the example of your father in the podcast, I would be a lot more specific on the feedback I'm looking for. Because when you leave it open-ended, it's very tough for people to give you the proper feedback. And I found it out very early in the process, and then I made some shift. But when it comes to the validation, what I've come to realize from doing a lot of work internally on myself in the last 18 months or so is that it comes down to, of course, your self-worth, how much you believe in yourself, how much you trust yourself. But also realizing that the only person you need validation from really is yourself. And then when you go to get validation from others, it's more to, again, check on those blind spots and say, hey, are there some ideas I haven't considered? Are there some parts of this process I haven't considered? So if I were to go back and redo this or whatever other project I take home from now on, right, it has to do with, okay, I'm not looking for validation specifically, but I'm looking for feedback. I'm looking to see if I'm missing anything. I'm looking to see how I can improve this from day one. Because one idea I stand behind a lot, both in my professional life and in the podcasting world and my personal life, is the idea of failing fast. So I want to try things. If something doesn't work or it doesn't give me the results I'm looking for, fail fast, learn from it, and move on and try something else. Yeah. Now, the tricky part with failing fast is what timeline do you put on it? Do you try for a month, 3 months? That's still to be decided.
Fast for Fonzie is like 6 months. We're still waiting to hear feedback, 6 months ago. No, I'm kidding.
I'm fast when I step in the soccer pitch.
Yeah.
Outside the soccer pitch, I'm on resting mode. But yeah, that's actually a great question. And that's a question we kind of debated here in the podcast a while back, which is, in a way, when to pivot, right? Specifically for, certain things might just take a longer time to measure, right? We always talk about how for the first, I think it was like 6 months to a year, we barely watch any of the data. Because for us, the indicator of whether this was working or not was creating, right? Like we wanted to be consistent. So at first, it's okay, can we stay consistent for 6 months? The answer is yes, cool. All right, we succeeded on this one. And then eventually we started looking at other data points, right? But I think that is very important. So how do you go about, for somebody that's listening right now, they're like, okay, I have my idea. I've been thinking about it for a year now, right? And I'm about to launch it. What is maybe a good starting point for you to what is that first thing that you measure? And maybe what time frame do you give yourself to see whether you need to pivot a little bit or not, or adapt your KPIs that you're looking for, to succeed with this?
Yeah, great question, Fonzie. And before I even go there, I would say the first element that was very important to me, and I see as very important to many people doing a podcast or a business or anything else in life, is having a strong why, having a strong vision. And does it line up with whatever you're doing? Because that's what's been driving me all along. And I know that whatever I'm doing right now is lined up with my vision, which means it doesn't matter what the numbers show right now. It's aligned. I'm learning a lot from it, so I can focus on the quality of it. Now, when it comes to the KPIs and whatnot, I'm only 3.5 months in, and I would be lying if I said, that the number of downloads, number of views on YouTube haven't been kind of something I look at occasionally. And sometimes I feel like, they should be higher. And I would imagine a lot of us go through that. Yeah. But of course, as everyone would say, is that's the least important aspect in the short term for anyone starting doing any type of content. And I'm someone that started my online persona, my online branding really 5 months ago, right before the podcast went live. I didn't have anything, and I was turning 40, right? So starting from scratch means that you're going to have a set of KPIs versus starting from a place where you have, let's say, a following and you just want to add a podcast as another way to give back and to connect with your audience. So for me, my biggest KPIs are, am I still enjoying the process, right? So that's something I check in every week. Am I getting feedback from people that's telling me, hey, your episodes are too long or too short, or the content is too slow, or whatever the case might be, right? I'm looking for specific feedback around the content itself, because one of the things I realized as I started recording interviews and being a host and then being a guest as well, is that we can always learn from every single episode and then improve how we talk. If I look at my first episode, I was using quite often.
Yeah.
If I look at my latest episode, let's say episode 40, whatever the case might be, I use it a lot less, to the point that it's almost non-existent in my vocabulary. And those are just small examples of things that we should do, or at least I look to do, is how can I learn from everything I do so I can make it better for myself in the long run. And my biggest aha moment, to tie it with that in your question, Fonzie, in doing this process, this was before I even published my first episode. So I was recording episode number 10 or something like that. And I was having a beautiful conversation with this lady. And I was beaming. I was super excited after the conversation was done. Yeah. And I remember going upstairs to my partner and saying, hey, I just said this big epiphany. If no one listens to this show, it doesn't matter, because the value I've been getting, it's worth every dollar I put in, every second I put in, every piece of effort I put in, because I'm getting so much out of these conversations.
Yeah.
Because you're building connections, you're learning from people you're having conversations with.
Yeah.
And at the very least, it's giving you ideas for how you can take your life and do more with it.
Man, you hit the spot, right? Like, I think we probably had the same epiphany, right? Like after a few episodes, we're like, I remember we were trying to come up with some titles and some catchy headlines, and it's like, how to get $100,000 of advice for free, right? And it was like, well, go interview your favorite people, the people that you admire. And at this point, I look back, and I saw this piece of content yesterday, and it was like, time travel. What was it? Victor sent it to us. It was like our cousin, right? Like, he's also very entrepreneurial, but it's like sometimes we're not as happy with the results of what we're doing now today, but if you time travel back, your 20-year-old will be like very impressed of what you were doing today, or very happy or stoked, right? So I look at my life, and we own a physical studio. We do this. We podcast full time. We have fun. I have 2 kids, Fonzie, Arsenal is winning, like, who knows, all these things, right? And then our past us will be so excited about the situation, and sometimes we're so like in the moment that we might not see those positive things, right? And I think that comes a lot with the show. So how do we, for ourselves, same thing. It was like, man, like, we didn't have a show, now we have a show, right? We weren't getting advice, now we're getting advice from the people that we admire, and we can connect. And it's this very powerful tool that can get you closer to the people that you really want to be involved with. Right now, we live in a world that is, at the same time, it's like very connected, but at the same time, it's like everything is like all over the place, and it can be really challenging to pick, like, who am I gonna follow? What's the message I'm gonna be next to? And this gives us an opportunity to go directly to the source and do that. And this is apart from business side, right? Like, it brought a lot of business opportunity as well, for sure. But on the personal side, I think that's the biggest win. And we say, hey, if everything goes away, the last thing that goes is like the show, right? Like, we're gonna continue to do this. So I think, like, what you say is like super powerful.
So I'm curious. You've mentioned guesting and conversation with other people. Your show is mainly interview based, right? It's conversations with other leaders. I'm curious on what has been the value for you, for your network, right, on having these conversations about around a specific topic as well, right? And how do you see also the network coming into place for the development of your personal brand? And I'll share I don't want to add context to the question because I don't want to influence in any way your answer. But I will be adding context after of why I'm asking this question, right? And if you heard Content's Profit, I'm sure you know where I'm going with this.
Exactly. Love it. Well, first of all, the value in the conversations. I would say I'm someone that's always being challenged in the status quo. And when I would coach or mentor others, I would always encourage them to challenge it as well. Or I would challenge their beliefs and say, hey, you see this situation this way. Have you considered the alternatives? And one of the biggest values for me in having conversations with people that I would normally not interact with is exactly this. A, I'm learning about something I didn't know, but B, is challenging the way I see the world. So if I see the world only in white and someone comes in and shows me the other colors around it, I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe I take a step back and I'll now consider all the various options.
Yeah.
And I would say that's one of the biggest components to it. Now, the networking piece, huge, because it allowed me to now connect with people that, again, otherwise I would never connect with, but opens up opportunities for public speaking, keynote speaking, group coaching, retreats, workshops, you name it. Things that, like, if you and I talked 6 months ago, I would be like, yeah, I don't think I'll ever do that. Now, those opportunities are starting to show up because I'm putting myself outside of my comfort zone. I'm challenging myself, and I'm keeping an open mind and allowing this information to come in. It doesn't mean I have to agree with everything. Yeah, let's say Louis and Fonzie are saying, but I can keep an open mind and say, you know
what? Wait, how dare you? No, I'm
my bad. Yeah. That's, I would say, the biggest value. Now, the second biggest value I would say for me is realizing that through podcasting, you're doing two things that usually don't come together, which is learning and giving back at the same time. And there's not a lot of things that one can do where you can say, I'm learning so much, and at the same time, I'm giving back so much.
Yeah, true. I remember a few months after we started our podcast, one of the epiphanies that I had, or one of the reflections I was sharing with people, was the fact that of that personal growth that had happened since we started recording episode 1 up to that point, and now even more, right? Because like you said, having so many conversations with so many different people with different opinions, some of them, of course, I would say majority potentially have very similar opinion to you, specifically when you're doing a podcast in a very specific niche. It tends to happen. But it was the fact that it's like, wow, like if I look back 3 months ago, I wouldn't recognize the Fonzie from back then. Like the difference in growth is just huge, is massive, and that's definitely extremely valuable. But I love what you mentioned about conversations turning into opportunities, right? Whether you're seeking them or not. And of course, the context is that's exactly what happened with us and our show. We started getting opportunities on our world. It looked like this guest becoming customers, and we, had the epiphany of, wow, this is great. Like the people that we're talking to, we can actually help them as well, right? Like there's out of these conversations, there is, like you said, there's value for everybody, not just value for us from listening to the guest, but also the guest is receiving value. And if the worlds align, there's opportunities for everybody in here. And that was absolutely amazing. And then we made more of a conscious decision to say, okay, let's explore these opportunities that can potentially arise from conversations with our guests, whether that is partnerships, right? Like speaking gigs, all these things. And it was absolutely amazing, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I go back to my class in sport management back in college. I had one teacher that she would always say, hey, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think podcast is such a good platform to get to know all these incredible people with, that people, they have opportunities attached to them, like if somebody was like a bubble, they would have like a bunch of bubbles attached to them. And those are like all opportunities that could potentially influence your world in any way. And I think it's absolutely amazing. And I love the fact that you have stumbled upon this as well, and you have created opportunities in your own world.
I want to add something here, right? Because we sound like a broken record selling podcasting, which is obvious, which is great. But I want to encourage people that podcasting is a medium to do this. But you can also do it in any platform. You can collaborate over Facebook. You can collaborate writing. You can collaborate on Instagram. You can collaborate, on a phone call. Like
building relationships.
Build your relationship, right? Like the content is just a very amazing excuse to put you in front of that person that you really want to connect, right? And at the same time, you can build something that we call art, authority, relevancy, and trust with consistency, right? You're going to be putting that content out there. So for a lot of people, if you're listening to that, you might be scared maybe that you don't want to be on camera right away, right? Like maybe you like writing versus producing video, or you might not have the tech to do it, right? Like you could do it from a phone, right? At the end of the day, like there's different logistical things that we can do, but at the end of the day, it's like, how can I get closer to that relationship that I really want to foster, develop, learn from, right? And the content is just a really good way to do that, right? Like if we pass a page and then it's like on the business side, it's like, how do we do this for our business? Then that's an extension to that relationship, right? There's many outcomes that can happen from that. So I don't want to discourage anybody, be like, oh, I don't want a podcast. It's something I don't like. It's like, you can still do, it's the same framework. You can still do it in any platform, right? Like a good example that we got reached out by this entrepreneur. They do SOPs and business and different things, and their way to communicating is through blogs. And we literally jumped on a call. It was a phone call, and he asked me some questions. I responded to the questions, and then they published a blog post, and that's their way. And then we built that relationship over that way. So I really want to encourage people to go and do that. I know that you have a question at the tip of your mouth, but I also have a question at the tip of my mouth.
All right, so since I'm the younger brother, I get to go first. Constantine. So just
I definitely want
on the conversation of opportunities, and we can keep this on live. But I'm just curious on now that you've spotted, the ability of your platform to create these opportunities. What is the opportunity that you're seeking, that you're after?
What is the opportunity I'm seeking? Wow, that's a great question. Well, my vision has always been around being in service to others and inspiring and empowering people. And at the beginning, the mistake I made was that I came up with the idea of the podcast, and I'm like, oh, this is it. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life while working a full-time job, right?
Yeah.
And I boxed myself in. And then as I started learning and going through the process, I realized, wait a second, this is just like the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more underneath that can be enabled because I'm doing this.
Yeah.
We talked about the collaborations, the network being built. Yeah. So my vision now is expanding significantly what I can help people one-on-one, which I've been doing through mentorship, through Microsoft, and outside of it, coaching and whatnot. But also I'm looking at how do I take my knowledge and put it in such a format where others can consume it, and I can help them find their why, their purpose, find that extra that can bring them joy and fulfillment in life. So for me, the vision long-term is taking that and putting it into one-to-one, but also one-to-many, because I want to impact as many people as I can. And one-to-one is just not scalable. So how do you do one-to-many? Courses, retreats, workshops, public speaking, keynote speaking, any and all of those exercises. And I'm actually in the process of learning how to do a lot of those things, because I have some skills from the corporate world, but it does require you to put in the reps, to put in the process, right? So it's a lot of working on myself, learning from others, and then and not being too fixed in how this vision will look like, right? I know where I want to go, but how I get there and how it shows up, that's not up to me.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's great, man. And we fully support you. And just know that you have two brothers here, like supporting in any way. So you have our number. You can just send us a text.
But if Arsenal plays Bayern in Champions League, just know that we're enemies.
Mortal enemies.
I would imagine. So
I'll be waiting. I'll be waiting for one of you with Barca in the final. So it's okay. I'm in the last stretch of the show. I really want to dive into a little bit of the logistics, right? Because a lot of the conversations that we're in, a lot of the questions come from how do I actually run the show? How do I create it? Like, how do I do it while I have something else, right? Because when we talk about the monetization side, we were doing a tour on Saturday with these amazing two women, and they have an incredible message that they want to share to the world, right? And the question always comes, and it's one of the 6 stages, right, of content that we talk about all the time. It's like, how do we actually monetize this? And this is going to look very different for a lot of people. But before we even go there, right, we have to conquer being consistent and being out there and putting our content out. So I want to explore, like, how do you balance, your corporate life with your creation process? Like, how big of a commitment is? Can you dive a little bit into, like, how much time are you putting into this? Like, do you do interviews? Do you do research? No research? What are some of the tools that are helping you in your process? I'm excited to dive into this because I think it's going to help a lot of people that might be in the same situation, right? Like we share ours, but ours might not be applicable, right? Because we have a physical location that we literally just sit down and turn the camera on, and then we're going live. Most people don't have that, right? Which, by the way, if you're in Jacksonville and you want to come in, Studio Podcast Suites, baby. But I remember our first setup, it took an hour to put the full thing, like the light and the cameras, and then we ended up recording with an iPhone, right? We're like, let's screw all that. It's iPhone time. So, what's your process? Like, how do you go about it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Luis. And that's actually one of the reasons it took me a bit of time to get going, because I wanted to really understand what it takes to do a good podcast, and then how I can simplify things, because one of the things that most of us don't have enough of is time. And of course, I'm like, everyone else, right? I had less time than I would like to. So how do I make the most of it? And of course, I was fortunate that because of my corporate job, I was able to invest in some equipment. So like you guys, I have a Rodecaster Pro here. I have the microphone, the lights. That was easy. And I had a home office already because I'm working remote for Microsoft. So that part was easy. So I have my home office. I rejigged it. So I have a webcam. I have my audio equipment, and that was easy, right? Now, the process it's funny. Initially, I planned to release an episode a week, but because of the demand I was having in terms of people coming on the show, I said, you know what, I'll do 2 episodes a week. And in retrospect, that was a bit of a mistake because I was taking on too much at the beginning. But I made that commitment. I said, how do I make it work? Yeah. And for those listening, for me, it takes me roughly 10 hours per episode to record, process the episode, edit the episode, make shorts out of it, make articles out of it, all the content that goes with it, right? Take me 15 hours, some might take me 20 hours. There is a bit of research into every guest that I speak with. To answer your question, Luis, I do spend at least an hour to an hour and a half researching on the guest. If there is a book, I'll do my best to read at least parts of it, if not all of it. My recordings are conversations.
Yes.
So I'm not there asking questions. I let it go more organically. So I find that doesn't require as much research.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you want to know at least what the person is interested in, talking about what they specialize in, and going down that path. Now, the process after I record something, right? After I record, my brother-in-law is helping with a bit of the editing. All he's doing essentially is combining the different views from an active speaker to side by side. But then I take everything and I put it into Descript, which is something you guys use as well.
Yeah.
And Descript is saving me so much time because I get to do all the editing. I do all the reels and shorts there. And I do at least 2 to 3 shorts per episode. And I do all the content there. And then you mentioned the capsule earlier. I take it and I put it into capsule to get my show notes and everything else I need for social media. And that saves me significant amount of time. And if there was no AI to work with, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today. I might be able to do like 1 episode every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But because we have so much AI between ChatGPT, Descript, and Capsule, the process becomes fairly streamlined.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing, man. Thank you for sharing. I know a lot of people, this will probably trigger some other questions, right? So we encourage everybody to send us a message on social media at BizBrosCo with any questions. We just came from Denver last week. We went to Podcast Movement, and the last day we're like, okay, we're just gonna do a quick round to the floor. We're gonna say hi to the people that we love, and just we might record something. And we stayed for like I think it was like an hour. You were on the other room, but you came back at the end. With Will and one of his friends, and he was like, okay, here's my budget. What equipment should I get, right? And everybody gets so distracted or excited about equipment, right? But at the end of the day, it's like you could potentially record a podcast through your phone. And I think it's looking...
I mean, now there's AI tools that can edit your audio. And as long as you're recording in a somewhat of controlled environment, they're going to make it sound really incredible. Really like if you were recording without professional equipment.
Yeah. So, part of it, like we always think in frameworks, right? So it's like, what's the time that you allocate? And this is not directly to you, Constantine, but the people listening, right? Like if they're thinking about doing this, do a time study. Like how much time do you actually have available to do this? Like, do you have 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, 4 hours a week? And then from there be like, well, how long does it take me to do the research? How long does it take me to invite the people? How long does it take me to actually record the thing? Yeah. Do you know editing? No editing. There's softwares that you can use. Like we highly recommend Descript. By the way, we're gonna link it right below. We're full affiliates. We're proud. We're excited that we use it. And how do I record the interviews? But don't let tech be the excuse to not let you publish, right? our brother that lives in Colombia, he started his podcast over Instagram lives, right? And he called it a podcast, but it was not published on podcast platforms, right? It was just like, hey, we'll do a podcast. It was going to be an Instagram like interview. And we know Remand, right? Like he does like these amazing conversations on Instagram as well. So don't let the tech be an excuse for you to stop collaborating and growing your show. So, dude, Constantine, this has been amazing. By the way, his show, Unleash Thyself, you can find it everywhere. We're going to link it right below. Please go listen to it. Enjoy it. It's amazing.
Yeah, when you look for it, is the one with the epic cover.
The epic cover. And we're like, this is so good. And we're like, give us the number of your designer. And he's like, it's all AI, baby. Let's go. So if you have any AI questions, you know who to reach. Definitely.
AI.
Yeah, but dude, man, thank you for coming on, and I think this was a very refreshing conversation because we've been there, right? Everybody has their story on how they start to publish, and it's so incredible. Like as long as we're consistent and you come up with your own system and your own framework, it's awesome. So I cannot wait to see where this is gonna go for you, my man. In a couple of years, be like, I don't work with Microsoft anymore. I speak on stages, and we have this thing, and it's awesome. But thank you. That's all I gotta say. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Fonzie. Do you have anything else?
Same. Just grateful to have you here, to meet you today. It was awesome. Whenever Arsenal plays Bayern Munich, I'm going to definitely send you a message. Maybe we can catch up the game, do a stream recording and watch the game. And, hopefully you don't cry when Bayern loses, but it's all good. But David, it was absolutely amazing to have you on. And I love the fact that you're on a journey and you have a clear vision of where you want to go and you're taking action, most importantly, right? It might take people some time to, they might get an idea. And this was my main takeaway from today, right? I love, because I'm somebody that dwells in the ideas for a long time, right? Maybe I'm a decent starter, but I'm not the most consistent follower througher and, maybe finisher. I like to jump from idea and idea. And I love the fact of, the commitment that you have shown to this idea. And I can't wait to see where it's going to be in a few months from now, right? And who you're going to become in a few months from now from, having these conversations and implementing this idea. I think it's going to be amazing.
Absolutely. And I appreciate both of your kind words. And you're absolutely right. Like I was the same as you, Fonzie. I would have all this, but then I would doubt myself so much and I would be like, nah, it's not going to work. And like you said, action is the most important step. And one of the things that I guess I will leave your audience with, and it's something that's helped me be here today, there's a sign right behind me here on the right side that says follow your heart. And really the reason we're even having this conversation right now is because I've been following my heart, and not what's in my head, but what I truly believe is in my heart. And that's my why, that's my purpose, that's what drives me. And if you find that in your life, don't wait for anyone to give you the go ahead. Give yourself permission and go after it.
So good. To Constantine, we're two brothers, from a different mother. We're good. One day we're gonna watch the soccer game together. Barca, Bayern in the Champions League final. That's fine. I don't know where Arsenal's gonna be, but I think that's the episode. Fonzie, good.
Yeah.
All right,
we're good.
With that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning to the Content's Profit Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at BizBrosCo.
That is Ryan Constantine here. Help you unleash thyself. Please don't forget to share this episode and leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys.